This lecture will introduce you to pricing strategies. Specifically, we will look at the roles that price and value play in the marketing mix, how market structures, costs, and demand affect pricing. We will also look at the most important market factors that influence pricing decisions, how marketers use pricing strategy and pricing objectives to achieve their goals, and what procedures and strategies that marketers use when making their final pricing decision. A price is the exchange value of a product or service in the marketplace. In legal terms, it is the consideration that is given from one party to another in exchange for a good or service. However, price is not value, and there is a common misconception that price and value are the same concept. Price is the cost that a consumer expects to pay to acquire a product, whereas value is determined by the benefits received by the consumer from the product that is purchased. Oftentimes, students will confuse these concepts when first introduced because they attribute a high price to high value. This is not always the case, as we will see in other lectures. As for now, be aware that value is determined by each and every customer, so it is an individual concept to each consumer based on how they perceive the product solved their problem, which is what led them to purchase the product in the first place. As you can see here, that value is the difference between the product benefits, or how well the product solved the consumer's problem, and the cost to the consumer, which is the price to acquire, to use, and to maintain said product. The difference is value, and if we wanted to write it algebraically, we could say that value will equal benefits received minus cost. But because each individual consumer perceives the benefits received in a different way, then benefits are individual to the consumer. However, companies can create value, and they can create value by adding features to the base product. These features could increase the product reliability, meaning that it works more or works more often. These enhancements could lead to better product performance. They could make the product last longer, increase safety, or create a better, more appealing design. This final one is visual, and something that Apple has used to great success, starting the company's rebound in 1999. Price is the most closely related element of the marketing mix, as product, place, and promotion each have a cost associated with them. Price is the only element of the marketing mix that brings in revenue or earns revenue for the company, meaning without a price, a company would receive nothing in return for its product and services. Price can also be very easy to change, since prices can change literally overnight. Price should be aligned with the overall marketing strategy of the brand. That includes if the brand has a luxury brand strategy, such as Mercedes-Benz, then the price will tend to be higher. If the product has more of an everyday or practical use, then price should tend to be lower and more affordable. The price of a product will tell you something about the product itself. Firms will price luxury products much higher than they would everyday or consumer products. This should also tie in to where the product is distributed and how it is promoted. The market structure in which a company operates will also factor into the firm's pricing strategy. A market structure consists of the number and competitive nature of the firm's competitors. The market structure exists in the micro-external environment. Common market structures are monopoly, and when we say monopoly, we don't mean the board game, we mean a situation in which a single firm has the power to set and control price in a market. Drug manufacturers, due to patent protections, are examples. Now, based on the Sherman Antitrust Act, monopolies are illegal. However, the example we just gave is a common example of what's known as a legal monopoly. Legal monopolies exist through patent protection or through government regulation. Your utility companies operate in a monopoly market structure. The reason they do so is because their pricing decisions are overseen by a regulatory body. In the state of New Jersey, that public body or that oversight body is known as the State Board of Public Utilities. An oligopoly is a market structure in which several firms share the price power by being able to control supply. OPEC is an example of an oligopoly. In the United States, oligopolies, like monopolies, are illegal. However, there are no legal oligopolies as there are legal monopolies. A third market structure is that of pure competition. Pure competition is a structure in which numerous producers sell undifferentiated or similar products to many customers. In pure competition, no party, either buyer or seller, can control price. In practical terms, there are very few purely competitive markets. There are, however, many markets that are structured as monopolistic competition. In this specific structure, there is a limited number of firms that compete, and prices are dictated through customer demand for specific brands. Car manufacturers are an example of monopolistic competition. And in fact, most industries most products that are manufactured in most industries exist in monopolistic competitive market structures. Another important factor that contributes to a firm's pricing strategy is the cost to produce or acquire a product. A firm's goal is to make a profit, and profit is the difference between the revenue and the cost of a firm. Revenue is determined by taking the price of the different products that are produced and multiplying the price by the number of units sold. Costs are a combination of variable costs, which are the production cost or the cost to acquire the product, also known as your cost of goods sold or COGS, plus your fixed cost. Your fixed costs stay the same whether you purchase or whether you produce 100 units or 1,000 units, whereas your variable costs will change with the number of units produced. Your fixed costs stay the same, hence the term fixed. Fixed costs include or are also known as the firm's overhead and include such expenses as salaries for employees, rent, utilities, etc. Most firms will target a specific gross profit. Gross profit is the difference between our sales revenue and our variable costs, or again, our cost of goods sold. Which means firms will establish a price based on a markup to those costs. This strategy is commonly referred to as cost-based pricing. Let's look at an example. Let's say a product's gross profit, also known as its contribution margin, because the gross profit contributes to paying towards fixed expenses. Let's just say that we have the following example, where the selling price is equal to $1.59 and the cost of goods sold, or a variable cost, is equal to 1.03 or $1.03. We can calculate our contribution by subtracting our variable costs from our price, which gives us a contribution of 56 cents. We could also look at contribution as a percentage. This is what's known as your contribution margin or your gross profit margin. And we do that by taking the contribution number, in this instance 56 cents, and dividing it by the price. In this instance, it's 56 cents divided by $1.59, which equals to 35%. What this formula tells us, so what this calculation tells us, is that 35% of every unit sold will go to pay the overhead costs of a firm. This becomes very important when firms are doing their business analysis of a product and of their price. Because when setting a firm's price, it must be aware of three factors. The first is if the price is covering all of the variable costs. If it is not, that means for every product sold or every unit sold, the firm is losing money. It becomes very difficult to stay in business when you have a negative contribution. The second is if the price is in line with its competition. If you are significantly higher priced than your competitors, odds are you will lose sales to them. And the third most important factor that a firm must be aware of when setting price is the number of units it will need to sell in order to cover its fixed cost. This is what's known as the break-even calculation. The break-even calculation finds a break-even point. A break-even point is the number of units that a company needs to sell in order to cover all of its costs. Every unit sold after the break-even point will yield a profit for the firm. But until that break-even point is reached, the company is operating at a loss. After that break-even point, the company operates at a profit. The formula to calculate break-even cost is fixed cost divided by your contribution or gross profit per unit, otherwise known as your variable costs. So let's take a look at this graph and the calculation used to figure out the break-even point of 80,000 units or 8,000 units. Fixed costs are $40, variable costs are $5, and the selling price is $10. In order to find our break-even, we would take 40,000 and divide it by 10 minus 5, which gives us 5, which means that our break-even is going to be 8,000 units, which we see here. Break-even will also help companies determine if their selling price is reasonable. For example, in this scenario, if the total market for this specific product is 10,000 units, then this company must acquire 80% of the market share to break even. Obtaining such high shares of the market are difficult to acquire, and if it does happen to occur, then there would be a potential monopoly or oligopoly, and as we mentioned earlier, both of these market structures are illegal unless protected by patents or regulated. If this industry or if this company does not have a patent for the product, or the industry is not regulated, then the government would not allow them to sell the product or not allow them to produce and operate in the specific market structure. So break even is important to get an idea of your price and your market size and the amount of market you need to acquire in order to break even. In this situation, if 8,000 units was unattainable, the company would then look at changing its price. If they change their price to $15, then their break even would be 40,000 divided by 15 minus 5, or 10, which means they would have to sell 4,000 units to break even, which may be a much more attainable figure. The number of units sold for a given product is based in part on the price being charged. For most products, raising prices will lead to lower unit volume, while lowering prices lead to a higher unit volume. For products whose demands are inelastic, meaning a change in price will have little impact on the number of units sold, a company would be better off raising price. However, if a product is elastic, meaning that the percentage price change or the percentage of greatly affects the percentage of quantity demanded, then a firm would be better off lowering price. Let's take a look of an example of calculating price elasticity. The formula to calculate price elasticity, abbreviated by the variable P sub E, is equal to the change in the percent of quantity demanded divided by the change or the percent change in price. Researchers from the University of Chicago examined pricing effects on margarine. They have reduced the price of margarine first from 89 cents to 71 cents. This led to a 66% increase in sales. They further lowered the price of margarine from 71 cents down to 69 cents. This 2-cent difference had a 222% increase. In order to calculate the price elasticity of margarine, we would have to take the 66% increase and divide it by the percentage change in price, which is calculated by taking by subtracting the new price, or 71 cents, from the old price and dividing it by the old price of 89 cents. This reduces down to 18 over 89, or a 20% price change. If we were then going to divide 0.66 by 0.2, we would get an answer of approximately 3.3, which means that margarine is price elastic. Any answer in absolute terms that is greater than 1 will yield a product that is price elastic, and changes in price will dramatically affect demand. Luxuries tend to be elastic. In this instance, I don't know if margarine can be considered a luxury, but it is an elastic product. If we further looked at the second move, a 2% change, or a 2-cent change, which is equivalent to an approximate 3% decrease, would lead to a 222% increase. In this instance, we'd have 222 divided by minus 0.03, or 2.22, which gives us a price elasticity somewhere around 70. In this instance, the manufacturer of the margarine would have been better off lowering price, because the increased sales more than offsets the lost revenue per unit. However, not all products are elastic. If we went through this calculation and the answer was less than 1 in absolute terms, then the product would be inelastic. Necessities tend to be inelastic, meaning that a price change will not dramatically affect quantity demanded. In this case, companies are better off raising product price because it will yield more sales dollars. When firms are setting price, they usually have to follow certain pricing practices. Pricing practices are considerations, such as legal requirements or bidding practices, that must be taken into account when establishing a price for a product or a service. Common considerations in pricing include the legal requirements that entail the role that the governmental regulations play in setting price. Firms must ensure that federal antitrust laws are not violated when setting price. Price is the most heavily regulated of the 4 Ps, and antitrust laws regarding price fall into 3 categories. These are price fixing, which is collusion among competitors, price discrimination, charging different prices to different customers, and predatory pricing, or price reduction solely to drive competitors out of business, are illegal. These pricing issues deal mainly in the business-to-business market, but federal and state governments also regulate pricing as it relates to consumers. An example would be the regulation over deceptive pricing, otherwise known as bait and switch pricing. Competitive bidding relates to the acquisition of goods and services solely in the B2B environment. When a major purchase is undertaken by a firm, they will issue a request for quote or a request for proposal, an RFP. The RFP will identify the exact specifications of the product they are seeking. Suppliers will then submit sealed bids. All bids are unsealed on a set date, and in most cases, the lowest bidder is awarded the contract. We say most cases because in some instances, the lowest bidder may not be capable of delivering the product. In that case, the company or the company that put the RFP out will then have to go through the entire process again. Most bidders or suppliers are vetted and analyzed beforehand to determine whether they are capable of delivering upon their quote. Another factor that needs to be considered is that of the global market environment. The world is getting smaller, and most companies operate globally. Each different country has a different set of rules regarding pricing of products. When a company operates globally, they have to be aware of the regulatory environment in each country. This makes it very difficult for firms to have a consistent pricing strategy for a product in all of its markets. As an example, if you've ever purchased an international edition of a textbook, you would notice that the price is much lower than that of a domestic version of the text. However, the international edition usually comes with a disclaimer on the front cover that is not for sale in the US. The reason is because the foreign countries or international markets have price setting laws or price ceiling laws that determine the highest price a product can be sold for. Because a company's profits are limited in these markets, they need to be free to set a higher price in less regulated markets like the United States. They will then average out the higher profit in the US versus the lower profit in the international market to a specific previously targeted overall profit margin. However, the number of different markets that firms operate in today make this practice very difficult. Once all of the analysis on considerations and costs and demand are conducted, and all practices are considered, a firm will then develop a pricing strategy. A pricing strategy identifies what a business will charge for its products or services. The steps in developing a pricing strategy are: 1. Developing the price objectives. 2. Estimating demand. 3. Determining costs. 4. Evaluating the pricing environment. 5. Choosing a pricing strategy. And 6. Developing pricing tactics. Common pricing objectives include profitability, which is the setting of price to meet a specific profit target; volume, if a company is trying to increase its volume or increase its units sold, by doing so, they can reduce its cost through achieving what's referred to as economies of scale and or the experience curve, which means that the more you produce of a product, the lower its cost will be. The third pricing objective is meeting its competition. By doing so, a company puts itself in position to price its product close to that of its competitors. This usually occurs for mature products in which there are very few differences in product features other than price. And finally, prestige. Prestige is that of high quality or luxury. Many brands enjoy perceptions of prestige. Since price is often used by buyers as a proxy for quality or as a stand-in for quality, higher prices can help maintain the desired image. When products are in the maturity stage, firms tend to price in line with its competition. However, when products are new to the market, they do not have that ability. In this case, firms can employ one of two strategies. The first is called price skimming. Price skimming is where a product's price is set high upon its introduction and lowered over time. If we wanted to graph it, price is the vertical axis, time is the horizontal axis. The price skimming strategy would have a downward sloping curve, meaning that as time goes on, price will drop. Price skimming strategies are undertaken in order to generate as much profit as possible before competitors enter the market. The innovators and early adapters of the product adoption curve are likely to pay a higher price for the latest, coolest products. The key in a price skimming strategy is that prices will fall over time as competitors enter the market, increase supply, and the only difference between the products would be price. The second strategy that a firm could employ when launching new products is called a penetration pricing strategy. In penetration pricing, a product is priced low initially to gain market share more quickly. This can be done to take advantage of the experience curve. As discussed earlier, the experience curve allows a firm's manufacturing costs to drop over time as they become more efficient in the production process. When more units are produced, a company's experience curve is accelerated. A company will not produce more units unless they can be ensured that they'll sell them. The best way to sell more units is to price them lower. Other pricing strategies that firms will undertake include storefront pricing, which is when prices are set based on brick and mortar sales. These prices are set based on the required markup in order to support a certain physical location. In order to have a physical location, a firm has more overhead, such as rent, that they need to pay on a monthly basis. In order to meet that rent expense and the salaries of the people working in the store, a company needs to make a certain contribution each month. Storefront pricing takes this into consideration. Online retailers do not have such burdens, and they do not incur the same expense, and thus can charge lower prices than traditional merchants. If you ever look to buy a price in the store, versus online, you will know that the online price is lower. And it's lower because storefronts have more overhead and online retailers have less overhead. Tiered pricing is another pricing strategy, and it is the practice of offering different products at different price points to appeal to a wider market audience. Tiered pricing is used most notably with telecommunication companies through offering various levels of service or plans that cover a wide range of pricing. Let's take into account Verizon Wireless. Verizon Wireless will sell data plans that offer 2 gigs, 4 gigs, 6 gigs, or 10 gigs of data per month. Each one of these plans are priced at different levels. The different price points allows the company to generate more revenue based on more service provided, but it allows the consumer to pick a plan that fits their needs and is relatively affordable within their budget. Dynamic pricing is another pricing strategy where prices are charged based on various elements including market conditions and cost to serve, or are based on the value to the customer. Dynamic pricing, by the term dynamic, means that they can change price very quickly. Companies can also employ an auction pricing strategy. And auction pricing can be broken up into two specific types of auctions. The first is a forward auction. The second is a reverse auction. A forward auction is where a buyer announces a desire to purchase a certain product and a merchant responds with the price he or she is willing to sell the product for. Negotiations then can take place to finalize the selling price. In a forward auction, prices are usually driven downward. Whereas in a reverse auction, a buyer states the price they are willing to pay. This type of auction can be demonstrated or exemplified with Priceline.com. In this instance, in a reverse auction, prices can go up dependent upon how many people are bidding on the product, i.e. market demand. Companies which have multiple brands and multiple lines must consider how to price each specific product so to gain the total maximum revenue for the company. Within a brand family, it is important that each product is priced in a similar fashion. For example, Johnson's offers numerous baby products such as shampoos, lotions, and powder. Each of these products are connected to each other via their shared brand name. If the prices were inconsistent among the products, that one is being higher priced in the category and another being low priced, then buyers may judge the entire baby product line as being of lower quality. This may interfere or be opposite in what the company's brand strategy may be. Companies that have multiple brands in the same category can be priced at various levels. A company could have 3 brands in a category, and these could be priced low, middle, or high. An example is Procter & Gamble with Tide, Gain, and ERA laundry detergent, where ERA is the lowest and Tide is the highest. The examples of the low, middle, high is an example of portfolio pricing. In portfolio pricing strategies, companies need to be aware of their brand strategy they are trying to create and price products accordingly. As we said earlier, price can be changed rather quickly. As such, price is a tactical element of the marketing mix. Common price adjustment strategies include cash discounts. A cash discount is a situation in which a consumer receives a discount for paying with cash. They could receive a discount because when they pay with a credit card, the credit card companies usually charge the merchant a processing fee. Such fees can be anywhere from 0 to 5%. If you buy a pair of shoes for $100 and you use your Visa card, and Visa charges a 5% transaction fee to the merchant, that means that they keep $5 and they only give $95 to the merchant. Meaning, even though that price listed for those shoes was $100, they only ultimately received $95. Companies may give a 2 or 3% cash discount for customers that are not paying by credit, which means that, say, for a 3% discount, the company will take $3 off the product, meaning that they would get $97 in cash, which is greater than the $95 that they would give or receive in a credit transaction. Another common pricing adjustment strategy is a quantity discount, in which consumers buy more and pay less per unit. Not less in total, but less per unit. Another adjustment strategy is a trade-in. Very common in the automobile markets. A trade-in is when a consumer receives cash for trading in an old item for a new purchase. And finally, a very common price adjustment strategy is that of a rebate, for which cash payments are made back to the buyer for purchasing a specific product. However, common practices are not to give cash back to consumers as rebates, but to give gift cards, and predominantly gift cards for a certain store. If you've ever purchased a new cell phone or changed your cell phone plan, you may have received a rebate, say from Verizon Wireless. However, the rebate is more and more commonly coming in the form of a store debit card or a store credit card, say for $50. In this instance, the customer is not really receiving any money off of the purchase. They're just receiving more money in which they'll have to spend it in that specific store. This practice doesn't really benefit the consumer as much as it benefits the retailer. The retailer benefits because they receive $50 in additional product purchases paid for by the manufacturer, where the consumer may not want those additional products and may just want to bring the price of the product that they purchased down. They don't have that option in this situation. And this practice has become more common since the last recession started. This concludes our talk on pricing strategies. Remember, price is very important to a company because price determines the amount of revenue that will be coming in to a company. And without revenue, a company will not be in business.